Hello, everybody out there. As you probably all know, South by Southwest 2020 had to be cancelled, which is very sad news for everybody who loved the festival as much as I do. And I want to use the opportunity to give warm greetings from Germany to Roland, the founder, and Hugh Forrest, the chief programming officer. I met them both several times over the last years, and I can only try to imagine how tough that is at the moment for them. So I wish you all the best to face that challenge and to be prepared for the next great festival. We're all looking very forward to that. It is also sad for me because I, for the first time, made it through the panel picker, and was I was planned to be part of the program, which I am very proud of. And then we also created a piece of content for the festival this year, and as South by Southwest ask us to maybe share that in a digital version. That's what we try to do here, and I'm doing this for the very first time, so honestly speaking I'm a little bit nervous, so let's try how this works out. The content piece we provided for South by Southwest has been named A Code to Measure the Value of Experience, Human Life Contact as the Ultimate Differentiator. And I want to quickly guide you through that and give you an idea of what we are working on at the moment, or what I'm thinking of is getting relevant within the context of the experience economy. As an introduction, everybody's talking about the apocalypse of retail, and that the retail format is getting heavily under pressure, and I want to just put that into perspective to make you aware of a few important things that we have to know in this context. If you take the US retail market as a total market, that by the total market volume, only 11% has been distributed by e-commerce by the end of 2019. I know it varies very much by industry and sector, so there are industries who have way higher percentages, I'm aware of that, but in total, if you take the total US retail market, only 11% have been catered by e-commerce solutions. By that 11%, I find it very interesting to see that only 58% of that has been done by Amazon. I think it's important to see here that this development has only just begun. Sometimes you have the feeling that everybody thinks that Amazon has been taken over the world already. So if you look to the latest letters to the shareholders from Jeff Bezos, there's a remarkable quote in there from last year where he said, "We are a comparably small retailer in most markets where we operate." So he knows that his share is comparably small, so that's why he's working so heavily and investing so heavily to increase that. So don't get me wrong, e-commerce is not helping because it puts additional pressure to the square meter productivity of retail formats. But if you see to this 11% of share in US retail market by the end of 19, that also means that 90% of the US retail market has been catered by brick and mortar stores. So there should be still a chance to do this, but even so, 90% of the US retail market has been catered by brick and mortar retail stores. These formats get heavily under pressure, and they get, at the moment with the shutdown, for sure even more under pressure, and I am afraid that most of them probably will never open up again. But if you see this historical numbers from 19, for sure the share of e-commerce will increase, but even as the status quo as of today, something is happening that needs to be understood, and the challenges within retail is way bigger than only e-commerce. There's a well-recognized study from Credit Suisse, which has been published in 2018, which has been said that by 2022, 25% of US malls will be shut down, and maybe within the development at the moment, this is going to be even faster. Everybody knows that by the square meters in shopping per inhabitant in the US, there is no country who has more square meters per inhabitant, but even a number of 25% shut down by 2022 is an enormous number. And the question is, what is the reason for that? What's happening in this market that it goes so fast, and what is it really that drives consumer behavior within that context? And I strongly believe that we have to understand and learn that we have to distinguish between two perspectives that people more and more have when it comes to physical interactions or when it comes to physical retail formats. So one is buying, which is basically the fulfillment of demand. So people buy stuff on a regular basis, and that is going to be a permanent repetition of what has been done over years. And the other component is shopping, which is more the satisfaction of desires. So that becomes more and more part of leisure industry and what people like to do within their spare time. And the inconvenient truth behind physical retailing around the world is that the majority, I would say like maybe 90% of what has been offered in shopping malls or downtown areas is still been driven by formats who are focusing on the fulfillment of demand, meaning purchases that have been done this way hundreds, thousands of times before. And this is something that is very predictable for the consumer, but also for the brands who operate these stores. And when it comes to shopping, this is a different enemy, and this is a totally different set of expectations that people have, and that's also very important to understand that this is the challenge, because that's the question of what will drive traffic in the future, and it will definitely not be the fulfillment of demand. So that's why the point of sale as we know it will no longer exist. It will definitely become the point of experience, and I don't use the word store any longer, because I think it is the wrong discussion of only understanding retail in one format, which has been the store. Retail or retailing will have a variety of formats, will have a very new setup of competencies, but they all will have to deliver a point of experience, because otherwise people will not use their time to go there. And within developed countries and within developed economies, we have to accept that we are in this era of experiences already for many years. And sometimes when it comes to the experience economy, you have the feeling that it is still a very abstract thing, or maybe a little bit academic. I think it's not academic at all. It is the area of experience, because it's simply the way developed countries and developed mature markets go. So we have to understand that we are facing this area already, and that brands, retailers, and the development of consumption of consumer products will have to orientate on this new set of expectations from clients within that era of experiences. So just an example that I like a lot, because you see that whenever it comes to experience, that people don't like that word so much, because it is been used maybe in a lot of various, and so not really everybody thinks that it is, that there's so much potential behind as I think it is. And I like this example from the music industry, from the US music industry very much. If you see the gray curve, that's the total market volume of music, means physical and digital, that includes streaming, that includes, for example, iTunes, have been heavily dropped since 1999, which is something you would all expect, because if we were coming out of a world buying a CD for $30 maybe, and now you can stream the music of the world for $8.99. That is pretty much what this industry was facing, and what kind of a development it went through over the last nearly 2 decades. If you see the lighter gray curve, which is the development of the total market volume from 1999 to 2016, which has been created by the sales of tickets. And these are all the different shows that are run there permanently. So people stream the music of the world for $8.99, but they are at the same time very much willing to buy a $250 ticket for going for a specific concert that takes 90 minutes. If you add both curves together, so the ticket sales plus the music sales, the gray one, the total market volume of the music industry, of the US music industry, is above that level where it started in 1999. And we do have to understand that this is going to happen in a lot of industries. And this is not only a threat, it's also a big opportunity to earn money. So experience becomes very real and becomes a serious business. That's what this example, and there are also other examples, but I just want to share this example with you when it comes to the US music industry. So what we have to understand, if we want to manage future retail formats successfully, we have to have common understanding of a new set of KPIs. So the whole KPI setup that has been developed over the last 30, 40 years has been driven by a specific paradigm, retail paradigm, that has been driven by square meter productivity, conversion rates, average basket sizes, and we will have to find a way to measure experience, and we call this measuring the experience per cubic meter. And this is a very theoretical thing for sure, but that's why I would like to introduce to you an initiative to take this out of this very abstract component into a more practical, realistic setup. And I think it's necessary to find ways to really measure experience, because experience has the tendency to be the marketing buzzword of the century, and that's why it maybe is part of every marketing bullshit bingo game at the moment. But I think it is dangerous to understand this word as the next marketing buzzword. It is way more, and that's why we are working, or I would strongly recommend to seriously work on how to measure experience and how to get this into the KPI setup of the future. So that's why I would like to introduce a code to measure the value of experience, and that is what I call, or what we call, the experience score. And I want to quickly give you an insight of how that works and how that can be used to measure experience. So what we have done over the last 12 months is a pretty comprehensive process to create the experience score. We did a lot of literature research just to get a fully understanding of what is there in the academics and what maybe can be used. And out of that, we established a frame of references so that we have a specific understanding of what experience really is all about. Additionally, we did a qualitative analysis, so we had a lot of expert interviews with experts from different industries and from different countries to get a better understanding of how they think should be the focus on, and what they think, why and how experience can really create additional value to companies and marketing activities. So, and out of that, we defined the individual components. So we identified unique dimensions that we are very sure that shape and create experiences that make a difference. And additionally to that, we did a quantitative research where we were putting these dimensions into analysis to make it a proper score and make it a proper setup, which I will introduce to you in a moment. And out of that, we now have a reliable model for the quantification of experience. And so what we have now that we use and that we can use for different options and also different projects is we have a new dashboard created that has been able to manage these dimensions, and we have a total score, which you can see here on the left hand side, per experience, which is the experience score, and then you have the score per each individual dimension, which is emotionality, cognitive inspiration, sensoric, active participation, identification, authenticity, and does it really fit to these needs. I guide you through these dimensions now in a moment. So it's very important to understand that for human beings, a brand experience, a product experience, or a service experience is a complex thing, meaning that we have to understand that the experience consists out of different dimensions, and that we have to measure these dimensions to come up with a global score for the initiative or then for the experience. And the one dimension we identified and we are measuring now is emotionality. So it means experiences create emotional memories. So there are a lot of examples. This one that we used here, the picture is the Museum of Ice Cream, where people are searching for these kind of emotional experiences because they create very unique memories in their minds. Second dimension we have identified and we are working on is cognitive inspiration. So experiences translate content into the perspective and lifestyle of the recipient. So it's very important to understand that even cognitive content has to be delivered via experience, and this experience kind of transform the perspective of the recipient, meaning that by having that experience, that their point of view changes, not only by the content but also by the way that content is been distributed to the recipient. We have the self-determined participation. That's what we call experiences are active and voluntary, meaning that it is important that people can have, that they proactively search for these experiences, and that they can decide voluntarily about their participation. That's an important dimension that we think makes experiences even stronger. The fourth dimension is sensory, meaning that experiences address the senses in a deliberate and coordinated manner. As long as we are human beings, that is maybe not true if someday we are going to be uploaded to the cloud, but as long as this is going to be as it is, it's very important to understand that physical interaction within spaces, within stores, is a multi-dimensional sensory experience, and this is what drives a proper experience. That's why we have to have that dimension into our setup. The fifth one we identified for sure is convenience. So experiences facilitate easy fulfillment of needs. It is something that is very much underestimated from our point of view, because for example, if you go to the Amazon Go store, which is a very technique and software enabled store, as you know, and it has been not giving too much attention to very well done displays or very fancy staging. Not at all. It has a very clear focus, and that clear focus is maybe the best convenient that can be delivered within a store at the moment. But even especially by doing it that consequent, by delivering that convenience so consequent, it drives experience from my perspective. So that's why convenience is an important dimension to create a great experience and also to measure the experience. Authenticity, meaning experiences are authentic representations of a perceived image. So if the experience should be valuable and should be good, then especially in that field of experience economy and experience management, consumers will be very clear about the creating their own opinion if that was an authentic approach or not. I think especially when it comes to experience design and experience management, authenticity is a very important dimension, because the channel of experience management is way more challenging within that, but because many other media channels maybe are not that strict in that, because consumers do not judge other channels that dramatically, but by experiences we have to have that dimension on the agenda, and we have to measure that dimension, because otherwise the experience will not be a good one. Seventh dimension is identification. So experiences foster affiliation and identification. A lot of very unique formats at the moment have mainly been driven by community building and community, like these new formats, new stores are more and more focusing on creating a center of gravity for their interest groups, for their communities. And especially when it comes to experience design, we have to ensure that we enable these communities to have a clear point where this identification can happen. So when it comes to the measurement, so what we have with this experience score now is that we are able to measure causal relationships between several touch points. So this is an abstract picture that will show you how this AP experience score works. So we have the marketing activities, example given like a store or an event or a pop-up, or can be anything else. And then the measurement goes through these 7 dimensions that I have introduced to you. And these experience dimensions then been measured by interviews who has strictly been designed to this experience score, so that we can so that we can manage or measure, so that we can measure the experience per dimension and add up these experiences from that 7 dimensions to an holistic experience score, so we can benchmark, for example, different events or different touch points, but we can also benchmark the performance of a brand or a performance of a retail company over time with it. Or what we also can do is benchmark the experience score from brands against each other. And then we are working on finding causal relationships between the performance in each experience dimension and how that drives revenue, how that drives image, awareness, or every other KPI that is within that marketing activities relevant for that specific company. So at a glance, I think it's a new era of dealing with experience. We have to take experience out of this marketing buzzword area. We have to take it serious, because the performance of brands and companies within the future will be very much driven by, are we able to cater the best brand experience, product experience, or service experience possible, and can we enable our teams, our companies, to measure that experience, to take the progress within that development, as we have done it within marketing activities over the last 30-40 years, measuring everything and always been creating better performances within that. And we have to find ways, or we have to at least get a step inside this kind of things to also start a process within this. So it is important to quantify this. It is important to evaluate and compare, and also at the end to use the experience score to control. So that was a very short glance of that piece of content that we are working on at the moment from my little South by Southwest broadcasting studio from Hamburg. If anybody's interested for more insights, please reach out to us, or if you have any other questions or comments, feel free to do so. We are looking very forward to do this. Take care, stay healthy, all the best. Thank you.